today's news poll is bad news for the opposition leader, with his approval down 5 points and his disapproval up 6 points. But it's not good news for the Prime Minister either, with the coalition's primary vote stuck in the mid-30s. Labor might eke out a win with a primary vote that low, thanks to disciplined Green preferences that usually return to Labor at a rate of around 80%. But not so the coalition, given that Conservative splinter parties are normally protesting against perceived coalition weaknesses. And the preference flows on the right are nowhere near as disciplined as they are on the left. Of course, not too much can be made out of one poll. You've often heard me say that before, and in my experience, in any event, news poll tends to lag a bit. But to me, the most significant feature of this poll isn't that Anthony Albanese looks like he's got away with a shocking week last week, but instead the record vote that's showing for anyone but the two major parties. At 29%, the others vote combined is a record for news poll. And it suggests perhaps that Labor's poor performance in week one isn't sending voters to the coalition, but instead driving support for anyone but the two major parties. Labor's losing votes, as you might expect, but the Liberals aren't picking them up, which would be frustrating campaign strategists, I've got no doubt. But I've got some sympathy here for voters. I can see why traditional supporters of both big parties would be disappointed and perhaps frustrated with their tribe. After all, with debt and deficit record levels, with so much of its legislation from religious freedom to workplace reform stalled in the Senate, that rollover on net zero and a reluctance to tackle culture issues like what our kids are being taught in schools, the best you can say about the government is that action hasn't exactly matched talk. And with Albanese still largely unknown after 26 years in the Parliament, running a small target strategy and showing last week he just hasn't done the work needed for our nation's top job, what positive reason is there to vote Labor, other than perhaps if you dislike the PM? As someone at the heart of two election campaigns that reduced a first-term Labor government to minority status and another that produced a thumping win, I reckon I've got a pretty good idea of what successful oppositions need to do. And it's not just attacking the government from all points of the ideological compass. A successful opposition needs to be able to tell voters how things would be different and better if the government changes. It's simply not enough to say we'll get rid of an unpopular Prime Minister, because government isn't just about who's in the lodge, it's about making our country better. It's precisely because Anthony Albanese has such modest stated ambitions for change, a few GP clinics here and there, a bit more support for childcare, better meals and nurses in aged care, that the government can say he's hiding his real intentions, especially as he often seems to be talking at cross purposes with himself. It's not just his ignorance of the unemployment rate or his lack of ticker on border protection. It's also Albanese's insistence on more action on climate change, coupled with comments yesterday that if new coal mines in Queensland meet environmental standards, they'll go ahead, he says, under Labor.
Labor's position on this is very clear, that you have appropriate environmental approvals, and if coal mines stack up environmentally and then commercially, which is a decision for the companies, then they get approved. And then Labor would welcome any jobs that would be created from that.
Now hang on, how can it be essential that we get emissions down further and faster, yet more coal mines will open in Queensland if they pass relevant tests? Either the opposition leader is planning even tougher environmental rules to stop these new coal mines, or he's not being fed income when he says climate comes first. Of course, he's not the only contender who's working both sides of the street. The Prime Minister today, campaigning in Perth, wanted to be the champion of the resources sector, coal, gas, all of it, while still being absolutely committed to net zero by 2050.
To have a strong economy, you need to have a strong resources sector. And you can't be double-minded about it. You can't support it one year and then when an election's coming up, not support it, or vice versa.
All the while, we're watching a mess unfold in Europe because they've led green climate policy out and out, top of their economy, and it's destroyed energy security. Yet here we are making similar stupid mistakes. With both the Prime Minister and opposition leader trying to be all things to everyone, it's little wonder that more and more Australians are opting for minor parties and independence. And the trouble with that is it would make a bad situation even worse. The bigger and stronger the minor party vote, the more likely we'll have a hung parliament. Alive to that very reality, the Prime Minister today ruled out any deals with the Voice's so-called independents.
Yeah, I won't be doing any deals with independents.
And while Labor says they won't do deals now, we all remember what happened when Julia Gillard needed the Greens to form government.
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead.
Let's hope one of these two major parties can find their true voice over the next 5 weeks and start to offer voters a clear alternative. Now, for our country's sake, let's hope that's the coalition. But I'd say to them, you don't win elections sitting on the fence, and you certainly don't win a fourth term by being Labor light either.